All right. One thing to remember about the capacitor we had talked about, but we didn't really address it. It basically acts as it stores voltage, and as it acts to the capacitance that we talked about, as it's changing, is that voltage, the stored voltage, is actually just getting relayed to the side that we're reading, is a basic way to understand it, to try to keep it real simple in your mind. RF condenser microphones, we're not going to get into too much. The actual circuitry that can be involved in them can be a little in depth in trying to explain to you some of those things. But the basic thing to keep understanding is sometimes they can get a little bit wider frequency response because of a looser diaphragm and some of the components. And it can be used in a damper atmosphere. And, basically just like any of the other microphones, the key thing to keep in mind with that is to look at its specs, and with the understandings we've talked about, refer back to that for the most part. If you really want to tear it apart and really get into the electronic engineering of it, then I suggest you do, and feel free, but we're not going to get that much into it. We're going to look at components in the next video, possibly in this one a little bit. The Electret condenser microphone is a really widely used condenser microphone that, it's getting used in lots of things, computers and phones, and it's kind of like a go-to in mass production. And if you can get a really good one, it will rival your normal condenser microphone. So, and without, the only other thing about it is that the actually externally applied charge described that we talked about is actually replaced by a permanent charge in an Electret material. An Electret is a ferroelectric material that has been permanently electrically charged or polarized. And that's basically the only difference. There's a lot of cheap versions of that microphone, and you're going to have to get a pretty good one. Some of the best ones will rival some of the good condenser microphones, so they are on the same level. And like anything else, take a look at the specs and what you're looking for and the things we talked about. And those would probably be the only issues we'd have to address as far as the transducer is concerned. Let's take a look at some components. Alright, you're going to run into a few issues there with wiring. The biggest thing, like we had talked about, is refer back to the manufacturer. Like we had talked about with the actual dynamic microphone, is ask them what it's doing to the actual sound. Look at the specs and ask them what their circuitry might be doing different than somebody else. Because like on this Shure microphone, that they don't even give any wiring diagrams. And if you go into here and you go on the internet and you find wiring diagrams of different condenser microphones, it can be a little confusing. And if you really don't understand the audio engineering, what's happening there, that it's going to be really hard for you to make a determination of what all is going on there and why that would be better. Especially with all the things we've talked about, that Bob has wired it the same way as Jimmy did, but he used different components, and he better components, or he might have done it just a little bit differently. If you don't really understand that, it's not really going to help you understand which one's better. And so your best bet with those things is, I definitely recommend you get the wiring diagram from the microphone that you're using and understand what's going on there. And because a lot of them can be different, they can be doing different things, or they're trying different things, or they've configured it differently. And be direct. Ask the manufacturer, what they've done to the transducer, what they've done to the wiring that makes that microphone better than Bob's, or what in there is causing those specifications with any issues you might be having. If you're not having any issues, that just a basic understanding of your microphone is a good idea, but sometimes it might be hard. This one, they don't even have it, so they don't even have a wiring diagram, and I haven't dug around a lot on their site, but I'm pretty sure that I probably wouldn't come up with one unless I directly asked for one, which at that point I probably could. So as far as the condenser microphone, I think we got a pretty good understanding. I do suggest you investigate the RF condenser microphone to get a little bit better understanding of that circuitry, but understand that you're going to be studying the circuitry a little bit, and go back and use those tools that I had showed you on the other videos I put on there for you to get a little bit better understanding of what's going on there. I'm not going to make a bunch of videos and start and explain all that, because if you have no understanding of any of that, it's going to take a while to do that. So I think we kind of understand how the condenser microphone works. For the most part, that, you know, having an understanding of that can help when we get farther along in this video series. And we understand we're basically with this at the same point we were with a dynamic microphone, is understanding the materials they give us, the configurations, how good the materials, tolerances, and all those kind of things really make it hard to really make a determining, you know, objectionable conclusion about them. And we're basically probably for the most part going back to, you know, what we had to begin with, which is specifications and the knowledge we have about sound and the things we've already talked about. Now, when we get into some things about building microphones, if you really get into that and you can actually build a microphone, you're obviously going to have a better understanding what's happening there. But for all intent and purposes, you know, having a basic understanding of what the concept is happening there is what we're trying to get to at this point. So when someone says, how does a dynamic mic work, or how does a condenser transducer work, that we understand what that is. And as far as how it might be wired or what it might be doing, they might have put low pass filters, high pass filters on it, used gold and silver instead of just gold, or some, you know, other titanium as far as the diaphragm on the condenser microphone. For us to get too deep into that right now would not be productive. So we're not going to do that, since we aren't going to get any definitive answers about that anyway. So I hope you enjoyed understanding what the condenser microphone transducer does. And I certainly hope that on your condenser microphone that you dig out the wiring diagram or find it and pull out those tools I showed you and find out a little bit better understanding of what's happening there. And, you know, it's good for you to understand what's happening in your signal flow. But for me to approach which microphone you're using and the signal flow in the exact one, I'm probably not going to pick the exact one you're using anyway. So you're going to want to address that with the tools that I've pointed out for you to use. So next, we are going to look at ribbon microphones. So I certainly hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next video on ribbon microphones.